Hello, ATM 101X. This is Unit 15, and my name is Genevieve Moses, and I'll be reporting for the dates January 25th, 29th, and 31st, and I will also be reporting for the dates March 24th, 26th, and 28th for Eagle, Alaska. Looking at the January dates, the 25th, the 29th, and the 31st, you will see that the week on the 25th started out with higher temperatures. However, the maximum temperature on the 25th was -4 and the minimum was -36. And the mean temperature was -20. As you can see, it started off high, and by the end of the day it was getting colder, which leads us through the rest of the week where it became even colder, if you can believe it. On January 29th, the maximum temperature was -36 degrees, and the minimum was -45, with a mean temperature of -40 degrees. Now that is cold, cold, cold. On January 31st, the maximum temperature was -9, and the minimum was -29, and the mean temperature was -19, which, as you can see on the 31st, the temperatures are starting to rise just a little bit, pulling us out of that cold period. Overall, the temperature was much colder this time of year than it usually is. As you can see, the red line is what documented the hour-by-hour observations by the National Weather Service, and the black lines are the climatology expectations for the area of Eagle. So, the maximum temperature in that area was expected to reach about 1 degree, and the minimum was supposed to be -17 on the 25th. And for the 29th, the maximum was looking at 3 degrees above zero and -16 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. And on the 31st, it was looking at 2 above on the maximum, and the minimum was -16. Now, what we saw was much, much lower, -45, -29. And what I take from this is just that the climatology reports cannot always be accurate. It can give you a good idea of what to possibly expect, because those temperatures, to be honest, are very cold, and it was cold still, so yeah, it wasn't spot on, and it was a dramatic difference in actual measured temperatures. But the climatology, if you were coming from an outsider, still probably would have packed plenty of warm clothes. Here we're going to look at Eagle on Sunday, January 25th, and then follow through the rest of the days. You can see here that there was a low pressure system in the area causing a little bit of weather, light snow, and probably a little wind, and it was not too cold yet. As we move to Thursday, January 29th, you can see that that low pressure system has gone and a high pressure system has moved in. There's still light cloud cover and a lot of fog, but it is not seeing too much weather, and the temperatures are getting cold, cold, cold with that high pressure. Then we hit Saturday, where the cold really sets in because it wasn't cold enough quite yet. And you can see that there are these high pressure systems, 3 of them, moving around Eagle, and very little cloud cover and lots of just pressure coming down and causing more cold. We actually felt that also in the Fairbanks area, but we're not focusing on that today. As you look around, you can see that there are systems seeming to move around the state, just kind of avoiding actually giving us some warmer weather. As you look at this graph, you can see that the observed humidity in Eagle for that week in January was kind of spotty, which, you can expect when temperatures get that cold. So, when we're looking at the dew point temperatures for January 25th, the maximum was -10 and the minimum was -34, with a relative humidity of 76% at a maximum and 70% at a minimum. For January 31st, we're looking at a maximum dew point temperature of negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit and a minimum dew point temperature of negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit, with a maximum relative humidity of 75% and a minimum relative humidity of 55%. Now, these all kind of hovered in the same areas of the day. You saw the highest dew point around 0 to 12 hours, and the minimums by about 24 hours. Now we're taking a dramatic shift and taking a look at the National Weather Service observations for Eagle in March, which, as any Alaskan knows, are two very different times of years most of the time. Occasionally we'll get a cold weather spell, but for now it's pretty normal for it to warm up. Before I start going through the numbers, we saw that the hourly observations were below the climatology, which is in black. Well, you're seeing the exact opposite now. During this week in March, the observed maximum temperature on March 24th was 43 degrees Fahrenheit, the minimum being 11 degrees Fahrenheit, and the mean temperature being about 27 degrees Fahrenheit. On March 26th, the maximum temperature was 48 degrees, the minimum was 34 degrees, and the mean temperature was 41 degrees. On March 28th, you saw 48 degrees as your maximum temperature, 17 is the minimum, and the mean temperature of about 33 degrees Fahrenheit. With the maximum temperature reaching its peak in the afternoon and the minimum temperatures holding in the morning, right before the sun rose. Now, climatology showed that it was expected to have lower temperatures during March, and the temperatures being the maximum for the 24th was 12 degrees, and the minimum was 27 degrees with a mean temperature of 12 degrees. I got that wrong. It was a maximum temperature of 27 degrees and a minimum temperature of negative 3 degrees, and the mean temperature was 12 degrees. The mean temperature on March 26th was projected to be 13 degrees, and the maximum temperature was projected to be 28 with the minimum of negative 2. On March 28th, the mean temperature was projected to be 16 degrees, with the maximum temperature being 30 and the minimum temperature being negative 1. These temperatures that the climatology reported are obviously lower, but overall it makes sense. As I said before, the climatology reports are taken from years of data collection, whereas this is on a single 3-day, month, or week basis. So we're looking at much different figures than climatology is. But these temperatures are not too far off. As I mentioned before, sometimes in March we get a really cold spell, and it's not common, but it happens. So it's not surprising that temperatures such as these would be reported by the climatology. As you look at Eagle, the golden star on our map, you'll see that there's a high pressure system working around it with very little cloud cover and no weather pretty much happening at all. It's a very calm day on the 24th. This is different from when we look at the map on Thursday, March 26th, where you'll see that low pressure systems, 4 of them, are kind of moving northeasterly towards Eagle. So as these pressure systems came in, they swept out the high pressure system, they created cloud cover, a little bit of weather, a light breeze, and it also created warmer temperatures. As we hit Saturday, you can see that there is a lot of weather happening across the state, but looking at Eagle directly, you can see that there is definitely cloud cover, and that there is a lot of precipitation going on south of Eagle, but not necessarily in Eagle right now. The low pressure systems have moved, and there is now only one coming from the south towards the north. The humidity temperature or measurements in March are much more clear than they were when we looked at them in January, because the temperatures are much more normal or easier to measure. So on March 24th, the max dew point temp was 19 degrees, the min was 10 degrees, with a max relative humidity of 85% and a minimum relative humidity of 40%. On March 26th, the max dew point temperature was 21 degrees Fahrenheit, the minimum was 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and the maximum relative humidity was 50% and the minimum was 30%. On March 28th, the max was 20 degrees Fahrenheit, the minimum 14 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum relative humidity was 85% and the minimum was 30%. You'll notice that the maximum times came out for dew point on the 24th was about at 1800, and the minimum came about 0600. The maximum time for relative humidity was 0600, and the minimum was at 1800, which is reversing the dew point temperatures. On March 26th, at 2400 or 0 for the next day, you saw the maximum, and the min was the same as 24th, and the maximum time for relative humidity was 24 hours, and the minimum time was 1800. On March 28th, the maximum time for dew point was 0, the minimum was 600, the max time for relative humidity was 600, and the minimum time was 1800. Thank you for listening to my report on Eagle, Alaska. I hope everybody had a great semester and is looking forward to the beautiful summer we're destined to have, right, after this winter, eh? Hopefully.